I think, frankly, what you have in Canada, and this is a personal opinion, I've lived there 20 years, 22 years, is a rigid, unyielding, doctrinaire prime minister who would see the last seal pup die as bloodily as it had to before he would yield to any grassroots public opinion to have him change a stated policy. I frankly think it's as simple as that. I'm Brian Davies of the International Fund for Animal Welfare. Worldwide attention was first centered on the baby seal hunt off the Magdalene Islands in Canada's Gulf of St. Lawrence. And because of massive media coverage of the hunt, in 1972, this hunt was stopped. But another, just as brutal hunt was still taking place off the so-called front, an area of sea ice off the coast of Labrador, northeast of Newfoundland. The Canadian and Norwegian governments claim that this hunt is the most humane, well-regulated hunt in the world. Don't you believe them?
The origin of the harp seal is wrapped in mystery, but to many its future seems short and certain. Scientists are unsure how or where seals originated, though in their present form they have probably changed little in the past million years. Before that, they are thought to have descended from a land-dwelling creature of the otter type, who, faced with changing conditions on Earth, retreated back to the sea. Most of the 30 or so species of seal live in the chilly waters around the Arctic and Antarctic, where they have adapted well to the harsh conditions. One Arctic species is the harp seal. This herd is found at the ever-advancing and retreating ice fields between Canada and Greenland. They are highly migratory and socially gregarious. The majority of their lives are spent at sea, where they are most at home and find their food. Their performance in water is astonishing, quickly accelerating to 20 to 25 miles per hour, and they can remain submerged for up to 30 minutes and dive to 600 feet. Their brain is almost as advanced as that of the porpoise, a creature some scientists believe to be man's intellectual superior. The harp seal is agile in water. Their hind flippers always point backwards, a position enabling the seal to scull through the water at speed, but makes that pair of limbs almost useless on land where the seal is clumsy and an easy target for the hunter. Now, many believe the harp seal is in danger of being hunted to extinction. The harp seal life cycle begins at the end of March, when the adults gather on the ice to mate and molt. By June, the herd is on its way north to spend the brief Arctic summer scattered throughout the waters of West Greenland and the eastern Canadian Arctic. Approaching winter drives them south again to their breeding grounds around Newfoundland and in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Here, as the ice forms, the seals keep open air holes by constantly breaking surface. At the end of February, the pregnant females pull themselves onto the ice floes and give birth to a single yellowish-white furred pup. The pups are relatively mature at birth, weighing only about 15 pounds. Though they have a thick coat to protect them from the cold on the ice, they do not as yet have the heavy layer of blubber to insulate them underwater. The mother converts her blubber into milk and transfers it to the pup, which uses it for rapid growth and changes it back to blubber for food storage and insulation. The pups put on weight at a staggering 3 pounds per day. After 3 days, the yellow tinge to the fur fades, and the pup becomes snowy white. The fur is actually transparent, and scientists now believe this allows the sun's rays to be transmitted down to the baby's skin, where they are absorbed as heat. It also makes for very good camouflage in their white world. The females are attentive and possessive mothers. An innocently straying pup can easily start a fight. Adopting the Harp seal threat posture, neck back, head high and upright, the mother asserts her right to possession. The pups cry almost constantly, and it is this cry and the pup's own individual smell that enables the mother to distinguish hers from the hundreds of others on the ice. The cry and scent is as individual to each pup as fingerprints are to humans. Female harp seals steadfastly reject all but their own when it comes to feeding, and as a result, orphaned pups have no future. The seal's puppyhood is short. At 2 weeks or so, they can take to the water. They feed from their mothers for only 2 to 3 weeks, but in that time, they put on 40 to 50 pounds in weight. This acts as a food store until they can feed themselves and insulates them from the cold. The white coat, no longer required, is slowly changed for a blue-gray one, better suited to the seal's underwater life. The young seals are now known as beaters. At 4 weeks, they can feed themselves and are capable of swimming long distances. The mothers now mate again, starting the whole cycle once more. Eventually, he would grow to be 6 feet in length and weigh some 400 pounds. His life could span over 30 years. But few of the babies born will reach even his stage of development, for their pretty white coat is a valuable commodity on the world market. Within days of their birth, Canadian and Norwegian hunters will invade the ice floe nurseries and batter the babies to death. The infants are easy prey, unable as yet to swim or move faster than a man can walk. They are helpless. The seal hunt, as it is euphemistically called, is not new. Over the past 150 years, some 45 million seals have been butchered off of eastern Canada. Little was known of the slaughter until 1964, when a Canadian film team stumbled across the hunt while filming wildlife in the Arctic. The film they made shocked the world, and a seriously embarrassed Canadian government tried hard to discredit the film and those who'd made it. However, the film's accuracy was soon confirmed by independent investigators, who found that hunters sometimes started to skin the babies while they were still alive. At the same time, biologists began to fear for the survival of the seal herds. In the early 50s, there were believed to be between 3 and 4 million harp seals in the Northwest Atlantic. Today, there are a little over 1 million left. But despite continued warnings from conservationists as to the imminent extinction of the species, and worldwide protests from humanitarian organizations and individuals alarmed by the inhumane killing methods and seemingly needless slaughter, the Canadian government has done little to curtail the hunt. What are their reasons? Sealing has been a traditional industry in Newfoundland for centuries. It is a poor part of Canada. Unemployment is high, especially at the time of year when the fishing boats are lying dormant because of the heavy sea ice. The government claims that the hunt provides the locals with 5 or 6 weeks' work and perhaps 25% of their annual income. Although the hunters are mostly Canadian, the industry is largely Norwegian, most pelts being shipped to Norway for final processing and distribution. Rumors persist of pressure from Norway on Canada to defend the hunt. And defend it they have. In 1967, after world protest, an apparently reluctant Canadian government ruled that no person could skin a seal while it was still alive. In 1971, the Canadian government appointed a committee to thoroughly investigate seals and sealing. They recommended that the hunt be phased out over the next 4 years. The government ignored the report. In 1978, with world reaction damaging Canada's economy, a desperate government sent a PR team overseas in an attempt to discredit the protesters. The earliest and most persistent has been British-born Brian Davies, who first saw the hunt in '66, and that was the start of a long-running battle between one man and officialdom. Davies collected scientific evidence proving that many pups were still alive when skinned. Next year, he was back with reporters and cameramen. In 1968, a Daily Mirror team from England joined him in later Paris match. Canada was clearly getting a bloody nose internationally. Davies was called before a furious Commons committee and interrogated for some 5 hours. In 1970, in an effort to demonstrate the viability of turning the area into a wildlife park, he took his children on the ice. The seals were amused, but the Canadian government wasn't. The slaughter continued and the harassment of the protesters intensified. The government's chief weapon against the protesters has been the seal protection regulations. Shortly after Davies started flying newsmen to the hunt, a regulation appeared that banned landing within half a mile of a seal herd or flying at less than 2,000 feet over it. In 1976, Greenpeace borrowed $7,000 from IFAW and announced that they would go on the ice and spray the pups with green dye, rendering the pelts worthless. Hurriedly, the Canadian government passed a regulation effectively banning this. But Davies, flying the Fun's helicopter, went on in.
After 4 years, in 1975, the IFAW was able to put together the logistics to put onto the ice an anti-seal hunt presence at the time of the hunt. The idea was to find a small group of flight attendants with major US and Canadian airlines, show them the obvious brutality and cruelty, and then use them as emissaries so that we could generate the sort of public pressure to stop the front hunt as we were able to do to stop the Magdalene Islands hunt. The mother seal you see here valiantly defended her pup and was struck in the face with a heavy wooden club. She lay dying for 2 hours while one of the flight attendants pleaded with Canadian fisheries officers to put an end to her suffering. But it was not until I arrived later that I was able to intercede and have this animal put out of its misery. It's quite clear to me that the only group on the ice protecting the seals during this day were the people from IFAW, the girls and myself. Our reward for this from the Canadian government was to have our helicopter seized by a heavily armed force of 6 fisheries officers and 3 Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The penalty, $10,000 bond before my helicopter would be released, and possibly a $1,000 fine and 1 year in jail for myself. All of this under the so-called seal protection regulations that do little to protect seals, but do indeed protect the Canadian government from any further embarrassment of newsmen reporting on the killing.
The authorities had overlooked the fact that Davies was a British citizen. The alleged offense occurred in international waters. Davies sued them. But in 1977, Canada extended her territorial limits to 200 miles so that all the hunt now took place under her jurisdiction. Nevertheless, Davies' plans went ahead. At St. Anthony, angry sealers and pro-hunt demonstrators, many of whom it was claimed had been paid by the government, stoned and threatened Davies and his supporters. Davies flew the waiting newsmen to the scene of the hunt, but this time the government got him. He was fined $1,000, sentenced to 21 days imprisonment, and put on probation for 3 years on the condition that he doesn't operate or be a passenger in any aircraft going to the seal hunt, nor be associated with any organization which sends aircraft to the hunt. Imprisoned briefly, Davies is now free on $15,000 bail and has taken his fight to Europe. 3 days before the Canadian government team gave their London press conference, Davies gave his star witness, an ex-sealer.
About half the pelts have come in Newfoundland have been really skinned alive. After the pelt and parted away from the body was still alive on the ice. Here's Norwegians and Canadians found. And the most cruelty I saw at the ice, I saw the Norwegians shoot the mother seals and leave the young ones on ice to starve to death. And that's the most cruelty ever I saw out there.
It's a mass slaughter that I don't believe has any parallel anywhere else in the world.
Regarding humanity, they claim that the hunt is humane, that they have observers on the boats all the time. Now, Mr. Adams said you'd been out for 18 years. In that 18 years, how many inspectors watched you kill seals?
I've never seen either inspector out on the ice, but I saw them in the willows the ship, fishery officers, and most of the time I saw them there, they was all drunk. So they wouldn't be able to see the captain, so they couldn't see the tail anyhow.
Drunk or not, the primary job of the fisheries officers on the boats are to count the pelts as they come aboard to achieve the quota limits that the Canadian government has set. This does not leave them very much time or even inclination to be out on the ice floes with the men. And anyone who has been out there would have to recognize that inspection, in the sense that you can have in a slaughterhouse on land, is totally impossible. It's all you can do to walk around and look after yourself without being looking over the shoulder of some fellow that's killing a seal. The Canadian Seal Protection Regulations have been in effect since 1965. Nobody has been prosecuted for breaking those regulations insofar as cruelty to the seals is concerned or taking more seals than they should. Only people who have been prosecuted have been helicopter pilots flying newsmen to the hunt, which would lead one to believe that the seal protection regulations are more to protect the Canadian government from the acute embarrassment media coverage of the hunt brings rather than to protect the seals themselves. And the plain, simple facts are now you may not approach a seal off the east coast of Canada unless you're going to kill it, except that as an invited guest and carefully controlled in your movements by the Canadian government, you may go. Anybody else faces prosecution, and if my example is anything to go by, likely imprisonment.
Then it was the Canadian government's turn at London's Savoy Hotel. Their lineup included Tom Hughes, a one-time protester who now seems to have gone over to the other side, the Newfoundland Premier, Frank Moores, and a veterinary pathologist, Dr. Harry Rossell. The Premier summarized their case.
Unfortunately, opponents of the seal hunt, as well as some members of the media, with sensationalism as their sole objective, have presented the hunt in a way which appeals to people's emotions. The charges about the hunt being made by the opponents to it are not true. As Mr. Tom Hughes, who is Executive Vice President of the Humane Society of Ontario, has pointed out, the animals are taken in the most humane way possible. Yet, despite the body of evidence produced by numerous impartial scientists from all over the world about the humane and environmental aspects of the hunt, opponents of the seal fishery continue to slander those who take part in it. It is our belief that many of these campaigns are designed to hoodwink, or as we would say in North America, to rip off the public at large. The commercial seal fishery off Newfoundland and eastern Canada is considered to be one of the most humane and carefully managed animal harvests in the world, and we intend to keep it that way. And as Captain Johnson can point out to you, the pelt and the fur provide less than 50% of the income that fishermen derive from catching seals. The balance of the value of the seal, first of all, is the meat. The meat is eaten by a great many people in our province.
Seal meat in Newfoundland right now, what they're killing, is dumped. It's just taken and thrown away. Not even meat, not even give to dogs.
In all, about $5.5 million is earned by Canadians over a short period. Most of it is earned by people from our province.
That average out, the Springs House out there, I made $200 a year. That's for 5 weeks. Some springs you didn't make anything. Some springs. I made 4 cents one spring. So what our government is saying right now is coming out now. They're preaching now about 98% of false reports. They do not make the money that Captain Marcy Johnson said was $2,450. That is false. He is telling lies, because I know I've got it in my pocket. What Arctic Endeavour made last year out the ice, take-home pay, was $400.
If it wasn't financially viable, why did you do it?
I think he means force of habit.
Well, at them days, when I used to go at them days, there was no unemployment insurance. This unemployment insurance have come up of late years. So you just I had no education myself, so I just had to go work for nothing, Or do a crime and go to prison. But I didn't do the crime. I went to work for nothing. So that's my answer to it.
So seals, in fact, are used for food, for clothing, and producing such items as soap.
And they take their seal meat and dump it. They always did that. This is mother seals now, and they're breeding seals.
Dump it, you mean throw it away?
Throw it away, yeah. Throw it away.
So as far as you can see, there is no significant meat industry that...
There's nothing. There's 100% of the government bluff. 100% the government bluff. Because I was the largest buyer myself, and I give it up.
Claims have been made that seals are skinned alive and the herds driven towards extinction solely to provide a few trinkets or fashion furs. And nothing could be further from the truth.
The main markets are West Germany, East Germany to a lesser degree, and the United Kingdom. We are led to believe by informants from within the sealing industry that if these markets are closed down, it will become uneconomical to go out with the commercial vessels to kill the seals, and it's in that area that we're moving. Although most Canadians, we believe, are opposed to the seal hunt, it seems to have little effect on the Canadian government. We've been able to have the American market completely closed to harp seal products. The same is apparently true in France. And I think that, my God, if you can't stop the products of the sort of thing that we saw on film from coming into England, what can't you stop?
The buyers are just as much in fault as the ones that's killing them. There's no difference. As well they keep buying, they're going to keep killing.
Having stated their case about the hunt, the government then turned on the protesters who had managed to get into the Savoy.
In my opinion, there was no reason to raise money by the International Welfare Fund because they're raising it based on false information as far as we're concerned.
May I ask what that false information is? Brian Davies, Executive Director of the International Fund for Animal Welfare.
False information, as I see it, is that you're saying that the seal hunt is inhumane. Our experts from the humane societies, qualified people, say that it is not.
Mr. Premier, I think you should be ashamed of yourself. That is a moral judgment anyone can make. I believe the seal hunt is cruel and inhumane, and I think that it's despicable that you should cast doubt on the integrity of an individual or an organization for taking that position. You should be ashamed of yourself, sir.
Why not?
I am a veterinary pathologist. I am really concerned about humane slaughter. Now,
I never saw you.
no, I know that you did.
I never saw you.
No, well,
And there's a group of people that are here today was never out on the ice in your life. You're talking to a man that's tore to pieces, has spent his life on the ice, handling the damn blubber. We never got paid for it. We made the low of 4 cents 1 year, and 1 year nothing out the ice.
Sorry. Let's not have a shouting match. Yes, sir, you have a question?
I would like to say, did you ever open the skulls up to see whether there's hemorrhage? Did you ever?
Yeah, I've even boiled them in the pot and cooked them to eat them for hunger. I never had nothing to eat. So you're not telling me nothing. You're only a political football, that's all you are.
I am not.
Political football.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons why we have to have regulations is a man like that. That's exactly why we need regulations, and we have to enforce them. This is a man who lost... Shut up, Brian. Please be quiet.
We will pay the wages of the sealers, not to hunt seals. Answer that, sir.
Why don't you tell him how much you take out of it, Brian, and be honest.
Tom, that kind of innuendo will get you nowhere.
Not innuendo, statement. How much did you pay yourself, Brian, last year?
When you can't defend the seal hunt, you attack those you see as the enemies of the seal hunt. Shame on you, Tom. If I paid myself more than you paid yourself, it's because I'm worth more than you. For animals. And this kind of innuendo that you're using now detracts public attention from the real issue, and the real issue is the seal hunt. Not Tom Hughes, not Canada, not Brian Davies.
My salary is an open matter. Everybody knows how much I'm paid. I merely challenge Davies to tell you what he took out of the funds of the Animal Welfare Foundation in 1976. How much, Brian?
Show me how much you're being paid to defend the seal hunt.
How much will just
If I could just take the microphone and answer Mr. Hughes.
You've been a dramatist enough.
Question was asked, I'm prepared to answer it.
And answer them, Davies did. A defensive government team put guards on the doors of their conference in Germany and canceled their Paris conference. According to Davies, they scuttled home with their tails between their legs.
Part of the job that I've been able to do is see the Canadian and Newfoundland governments forced to come on their knees to Europe to defend the seal hunt.
On the 6th of April, 1977, the 95th Congress of the United States of America passed the following resolution. That, because the killing of newborn harp seals in Canadian waters is considered by many citizens of the United States to be cruel, and if continued at the current high level may cause the extinction of that species of seals, the Government of Canada is urged to reassess its present policy of permitting such killing in Canadian waters.
And I think that if we're not able to bring an end to this particular killing, what chance have we doing anything, do we have for doing anything for animals anywhere? If the plight of the harp seals, which has moved people so much, does not resolve in their favor, well, my God, I wonder if ever we can do anything anywhere for animals.